What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we're going to continue our player bio series as we look at one of the more interesting players in the NFL. Now, while his career may not have been the longest, he more than left his impact in the league's history books, and he more than earned himself a spot in the NFL Hall of Fame. Today's video will focus on the playing career and life of Jim Brown. Now, James Brown was born on February 17th, 1936 on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. At the age of 8, Brown and his family would move to Long Island, New York. Early on in his life, it was clear that Brown was a talented athlete. In high school, he would letter in 5 sports. Those sports were football, baseball, lacrosse, basketball, and track. Now, Brown would graduate from high school in 1954, and he would enroll at Syracuse University. Now, he would still continue to play 3 sports at Syracuse, and those 3 sports were football, basketball, and lacrosse. And Brown, for football, he had a decent season in 1954, and he followed up with another decent year in 1955. But he more than made his name known in 1956. He really broke out that year for the Orange. He was a consensus first-team All-American while finishing 5th in Heisman voting that year. He averaged 6.2 yards per carry while rushing for 986 yards on the season, while adding 14 touchdowns. Now, that doesn't sound that impressive, but this was despite the fact that Syracuse only played in 8 games that year. Now, he ended the season on a very strong note. In the regular season finale, he ran for 197 yards while adding a school record 6 touchdowns on the ground. Now, he was clearly a football star for his college, but he was more than that. He was also very good in basketball. He actually led the team in points per game as a sophomore, but he was also elite in lacrosse. As a senior, he would actually score 43 goals across 10 games for the team. Now, upon graduating, nearing the end of his college career, he decided to focus on football. But his collegiate stats were more than enough for him to earn a spot in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Now, Brown declared for the 1957 NFL Draft, and he would be selected 6th overall by the Cleveland Browns. And Jim Brown made an immediate impact as a rookie. He set a record for rushing for 237 yards in a game. This record would stand for 14 years and served as a sign of things to come. He ended his rookie year as the NFL MVP, as he recorded a league-leading 942 yards with 9 touchdowns. Brown had another MVP season in year 2, 1958, in which he made NFL defenses just look silly. He set the NFL record in rushing yards with 1,527, which was nearly 400 more than the previous record. He also led the NFL in touchdowns. Keep in mind, these stats are across 12 games. Now, he had 17 touchdowns that year. Now, his 1959 season was also very impressive, as he once more led the league in carries with 290, yards with 1,329, and touchdowns with 14. Despite this, he was not named MVP. Now, Brown continued to dominate in 1960, as he ended the year with 1,257 yards on 215 carries and 9 touchdowns. Now, prior to the 1961 season, the NFL decided to add 2 games to the schedule. So he took a step forward in 1961, as he ended the year leading the league in carries with 305 and yards with 1,408, while also scoring 8 times. Now, Brown, he was a slight disappointment in 1962, as he rushed for only 996 yards on 230 carries. He did add 13 touchdowns, but this was the only season in his career in which he failed to be named a first-team All-Pro. That's just insane. Now, Brown, he would rebound well in 1963, as he once more led the league in carries with 291, yards with 1,863, which was a then NFL record for yards in a season, and touchdowns with 12. Now, Brown and the Browns, they had a strong 1964 season, as Jim would rush for 1,446 yards to go with 7 touchdowns. Cleveland would go on to win the NFL championship, but this was still before the Super Bowl. Just want to put that out there. This was the second to last season, like I said, before the Super Bowl. So One has to guess how the Browns would have done against the AFL champion Buffalo Bills if they would have met up in the Super Bowl. With Jim Brown, though, anything's definitely possible. Now, in 1965, Jim Brown had another strong season, as he rushed for 1,544 yards and a league-leading 17 touchdowns. Now, in the 1965 Pro Bowl, he actually rushed for 3 touchdowns in that game. Now, surprising many, in July of 1966, Brown announced his retirement. He wanted to focus on his acting career more than his football career, as he felt like he had done all he needed to do in the NFL. Now, apparently, a story goes that he was filming a movie off in England, and the filming process was taking longer than expected. Brown had originally intended on returning to the Cleveland Browns for the 1966 season, but the Cleveland Browns owner, Art Modell, threatened to fine Jim Brown if he did not report to training camp on time. So Brown said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to get fined for this. I'm going to finish this movie, so I'm going to retire. Now, despite his early retirement, Brown set multiple NFL records and was an extremely decorated player. He retired with a career stat line of 2,359 carries for 12,312 yards and 106 touchdowns over 118 games. He left the league as its all-time leader in career rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, total touchdowns with 126, all-purpose yards with 15,549, and single-season rushing yard, the record for single-season rushing yards with 1,863, which was in 1963. Now, he also managed to lead the league in rushing 8 times, which is an NFL record to this day, and it probably will never be broken. He was the first player to rush for 100 touchdowns as well. He is the only player in NFL history to average over 100 yards per game on the ground. Now, Brown also led the league in all-purpose yards 5 times across his career. He was a 3-time NFL MVP, a 9-time Pro Bowler, and an 8-time first-team All-Pro, a 1-time second-team All-Pro, and a 1-time Rookie of the Year award winner. He is a member of the NFL 1960s All-Decade Team. He is a member of the NFL's 50th, 75th, and 100th all-time teams, and he was a 1-time NFL champion. Keeping in mind, there was no Super Bowl. So that's a very impressive number of awards there. He was also the unanimous Rookie of the Year when he won Rookie of the Year. Now, he also had his number retired by both the Syracuse Orange and the Cleveland Browns. And he is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Browns Ring of Honor, and the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Keep in mind that Brown accomplished all of this over only 9 seasons. Interestingly enough, Brown considered a comeback in 1983, years after retiring. Franco Harris, a player who Brown openly criticized, was approaching Brown's all-time rushing record. Brown was a physical back who fought for every yard he could, while Harris would go out of bounds to avoid tackles. Brown, he really was considering coming back, but he ended up changing his mind, and Harris would retire a year later, finishing just behind Brown on the record list. Walter Payton did end up breaking Brown's record in 1984. Now, while Brown was a highly successful sportsman, he was also a respected actor. He began acting in 1964 with a part in a Western movie called Rio Conchos. And in 1966, he showed a desire to continue with his acting career. He had a decent role in the movie The Dirty Dozen. The film was a huge hit and led to Brown signing a big deal with MGM to remain an actor. He became a leading man in movies by 1968, with his first major part coming in a movie called The Split. He continued to star in movies throughout the 70s, but by 1975, he was nearing an end to his big screen acting career. By the 1980s, he was mostly acting for TV shows, which included a role in both Knight Rider and The A-Team. Now, he returned to movie theaters in 1999 with a role in the football movie Any Given Sunday. Since then, he has remained relatively quiet from the acting world. He did serve as a narrator in the 2021 NFL Draft, which was hosted in Cleveland, though. Outside of playing football and acting, Brown has had an active career. In 1965, Brown became the first African American to call a televised boxing match. In 1978, Brown called NFL games as a color analyst for CBS. A decade later, he would found the a Mayor I Can program, which works with kids that are caught up in the gang scene in the LA and Cleveland areas. Now, in the 2000s, Brown began working with the Cleveland Browns as an executive advisor. In 2013, he was named as a special advisor. He still serves in this role today. Now, Brown, he has dealt with some legal troubles in his life, which included multiple charges of assault and battery, all of which were dismissed. He was, however, found guilty on a charge of vandalism after he smashed his wife's car's windshield with a shovel during a disagreement. Despite this, he has remained a positive figure in the Cleveland area and is one of the more respected, well-known, and beloved NFL players. Now, Jim Brown, he may have only spent 9 years in the NFL, but he sure left a massive impact in the sport as a whole. He helped guide the city of Cleveland to a championship, while also impressing many with his rough running style that helped to change the game as a whole. Now, after setting multiple NFL records in his Hall of Fame career, Brown turned to acting, and he was successful at that. He is still alive and is doing well to this day. Jim Brown is definitely one of the more well-respected players in the league's history, and one could only wonder how good he could have been had he continued playing in the NFL. Now, I am well aware that I also discussed Larry Zonka, who also went to Syracuse around the same time as Jim Brown. Just a coincidence, I promise. I'm not a Syracuse Orange fan. I'm not biased with Syracuse Orange. But both those players are well worth discussing. Jim Brown is a guy who somewhat, I guess you could compare him to maybe Derrick Henry, maybe in today's game. But Jim Brown, great player, definitely one of the greatest, and you really have to wonder what could have been. Would they have been able to win that Super Bowl if they were able to, if there was a Super Bowl in 1963-64, would they have been able to beat the Buffalo Bills? Who knows? But still, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the player bio discussing Jim Brown. Have a great rest of your day.